Welcome. So one of the tricky things in German when we're talking about word order is what to do with conjunctions. So I'm sure that you already know that in German, the verb prefers to be in second position. So normally you would have the subject and the verb, but if you move an adverb or an adverb phrase to the front of your sentence, then the verb retains second position and the subject goes behind the verb. So once you have that settled, let us look at conjunctions. German has coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions just like English, and they have the same function. Coordinating conjunctions combine things that are of equal weight. So it might combine a word with a word, a phrase with a phrase, or a clause with a clause. And when it combines a clause with a clause, it's going to combine an independent clause with an independent clause. So an independent clause stands alone. It is a full sentence without any help. It has a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. So when we use the coordinating conjunctions in German, they do not change word order. So if you'll look here in the upper left corner, these are the coordinating conjunctions. So aber, denn, oder, sondern, und. And those conjunctions will not change word order. So let's just go down 2 blocks with me to where it says coordinating conjunctions examples. I have 2 independent clauses here, and I'm going to combine them with a coordinating conjunction. So my original is ich lese ein Buch and du spielst Fußball. When I add my conjunction, I have ich lese ein Buch und du spielst Fußball. So what you see is a subject, a verb, and a direct object in clause number 1, subject, verb, direct object in clause number 2. No changes in the word order. Right now, back to the top of the screen with the subordinating conjunctions. So I have given you a list of subordinating conjunctions here. The bad news is that this is not all of the subordinating conjunctions. German actually has more. But the good news is these are the most common subordinating conjunctions. Now, what happens with the subordinating conjunction is you're going to create, if you put this at the beginning of a clause, you've created a subordinate clause. What is the subordinate clause? It's also known as a dependent clause. It cannot stand alone. And it depends on being attached to an independent clause to have a complete thought. So now, if you'll skip down to the subordinating conjunctions examples. So my original is wir gehen ins Kino and wir wollen den Film sehen. Both of those stand alone. They're both full sentences. They're both independent clauses. But if I combine them with weil, that means because, weil takes the main verb and throws it to the end of the clause. And so in my second sentence, we want to see the movie. Wollen is a helping verb. That's why what I'm doing, seeing, is at the very end. Wir wollen den Film sehen. Now watch what happens when they're combined. Wir gehen ins Kino, weil wir den Film sehen wollen. So that second verb, sehen, doesn't move. It sits at the end. But the primary verb now, the helping verb, we want to, skips over everything to the very end of the sentence. Weil wir den Film sehen wollen. Now, there's one more thing that's a little tricky about subordinating conjunctions. What if, instead of having my independent clause first and my dependent clause or subordinate clause second, what if I switch those in the sentence, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to do? Well, if I move that dependent clause to the beginning of the sentence, it actually now occupies first position. It is a whole clause, but it is taking up the first position in the sentence. Therefore, the verb says, wait, I need to be second. So the second clause will begin with the verb. So look at my example. Ich gehe ins Restaurant. Ich habe Hunger. So I started with two independents. Then I add my subordinate conjunction. Ich gehe ins Restaurant, weil ich Hunger habe. I'm going to the restaurant because I am hungry. So habe hopped over everything to the end. But if I take my dependent clause, the subordinate clause, and I say it first, because I'm hungry, I'm going to the restaurant. Weil ich Hunger habe, well, I see that weil tossed the verb to the end, but now that's first position in the sentence. Weil ich Hunger habe, gehe ich ins Restaurant. And so I have those two verbs sitting next to each other, one to end the subordinate clause and one to begin the independent clause. And it's because that subordinate clause claimed first position in the sentence.